The first time I realized someone could steal land with nothing but letterhead and a smile. It was still dark outside, and I was standing at my own gate in work boots reading a foreclosure notice that looked like it belonged on somebody else's property. My ranch. 3,500 acres my grandfather bled for was suddenly in violation, delinquent, and scheduled to be sold like a used lawnmower. And the sickest part, the name on the paperwork led straight back to the HOA president's family. I didn't move back to my ranch for peace and quiet because I had some romantic cowboy fantasy. I moved back because my wife was gone and the city felt too loud without her, and this land was the only place that still sounded like home. You know the kind of quiet I mean, wind in the grass, an old barn creaking the distant clank of a trough chain, the kind of quiet that doesn't ask questions. I was a retired land disputes attorney, the guy people used to pay when things got messy. I figured my days of fighting over property lines and easements were done. I figured wrong. Canyon Ridge Estates showed up like a glossy magazine ad. Overnight, there were brand new rooftops where there used to be scrub brush and coyotes. They put in decorative street lamps, paved roads, a stone sign at the entrance like it was a country club, and then like clockwork came the HOA. Canyon Ridge HOA. They didn't just manage lawns, they managed people. They managed the idea of what belonged. And their president, Melissa Hart. She was a walking megaphone in a white blazer. Neat little bun clipboard tucked under her arm like it was a badge that practiced smile that says, "I'm being polite while I stab you." The first time she came up my drive, she didn't even ask my name. She just looked past me at my equipment like it offended her personally. "Mr. Cartwright," she said, dragging my last name out like it had mud on it. "You're now within our community standards." The board approved a boundary adjustment. I laughed because I genuinely thought it was a joke. "This ranch was here before your subdivision had a mailbox." Melissa's smile tightened. "The county recognizes updated zoning. You'll receive documentation." What I received wasn't documentation. It was a flood. Certified letters, fines, violations, threats, unsightly equipment. My old tractor parked behind my barn apparently was an eyesore visible from the community. Noise disturbance. My chickens, which newsflash are not exactly silent. Agricultural odor, like I could slap perfume on cattle and call it a day. The numbers were insane. $500 a day here, $1,000 there, the kind of penalties meant to scare someone who didn't know better. And every time I turned around, there was someone in a clean SUV creeping by my gate phone up, snapping photos like I was running a crime scene instead of a ranch. I started keeping a file. Old habit. Dates, times, photos, copies of letters. I wrote HOA harassment on the folder in Sharpie, half as a joke, half because I could feel the machinery turning. Then came the special assessment. I wasn't even at a meeting. I didn't even know they held one. I found out because Earl Watkins, an older rancher down the road who'd been here longer than I'd been alive, called me, sounding like he'd swallowed a nail. "Jack," he said, "they just voted an emergency assessment. $47,000. $47,000 for what I asked, even though I already felt the answer coming. They're blaming the road damage on your feed trucks. They're saying runoff from your irrigation threatens their shared amenities. They got a lawyer in the room, Jack. They're treating you like you're not even human. That's the thing with HOAs, they don't have to punch you in the face. They just paper cut you until you bleed out." And Melissa Hart. She didn't yell at first. She didn't have to. She just weaponized the rules and watched people fold. So I did what I've always done. I showed up. I walked into their little community center meeting in dusty jeans and a jacket that smelled like barn, and every head turned like I'd tracked manure onto the carpet, because honestly in their minds I had. Melissa sat up front with her board like a jury. She clicked a pen and said, "Mr. Carter, you're out of order." "I'm not out of order," I said, setting a rolled-up county plat map on the table. "I'm out of patience. Show me one county-approved document that puts my ranch under your HOA." She blinked like no one had ever demanded proof from her before. "We have legal counsel." "Great," I said. "Then your counsel can answer. Where's the recorded instrument? Where's the survey? Where's the county stamp?" Silence. A couple people shifted in their seats. Melissa's cheeks went pink, and for a second I saw it pure hatred hiding behind that smile. But then she recovered all sweet and official. "We'll follow up." I walked out of there thinking I'd embarrassed her into backing off. That was my mistake. People like Melissa don't retreat. They escalate. 2 days later, I got a letter from the HOA's law firm accusing me of livestock trespass into HOA property and endangering residents. It was ridiculous. My fences were solid. My animals stayed put. But the letter came with a bill, of course, and a threat to place a lien if I didn't comply. And then, like a bad movie, they cut my fence. I woke up at 6 in the morning to my cattle bawling like something was wrong. I ran outside in a hoodie, the sky still blue-black, and there it was, a clean, deliberate cut through 3 sections of my boundary fence. My herd had wandered toward the subdivision, confused, spooked, and I could already hear distant shouting from the HOA side. By the time I reached the break, there were homeowners filming yelling, and of course someone had already called the police. Melissa arrived 10 minutes later, perfectly dressed, holding her phone like a weapon. "This is exactly what we warned everyone about," she announced to the crowd like she was giving a press conference. "Negligence, unsafe conditions." I stared at her, breath fogging in the cold. "My fence didn't cut itself." She tilted her head. "Are you accusing the board of something, Mr. Carter?" "Not yet," I said, "but give me time." I installed cameras. More cameras. Trail cams hidden in mesquite, a little security system at the barn. And within a week I got what I needed, not from a camera at first, but from a kid. He showed up at the edge of my property, hovering by the mailbox like he might run. Skinny baseball cap pulled low, hands shaking. "Mr. Carter?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, keeping my voice calm. "What's your name?" "Evan," he whispered. "Evan Hart." My stomach dropped. "Related to Melissa?" He nodded, eyes glassy. "She's my aunt." I didn't say anything. I just waited. He swallowed hard. They paid me. Not her directly. One of the board guys. They said it'd be funny. They said you deserved it. They told me where to cut the fence. For a second, I wanted to explode. I wanted to drive straight to Melissa's house, and honestly, I don't even know what. But I looked at Evan and saw what he was, a kid dragged into adult corruption. I took a long breath. "If you tell the truth," I said, "and you sign a statement, I'll make sure you're not the one who takes the fall." He nodded so hard his cap almost fell off. That should have been the turning point. It should have been the moment the HOA backed down, because now I had a witness. But they were already too far gone. They filed the lien anyway. They pushed foreclosure anyway. They moved like they'd done this before, fast, confident, shameless. Letters became deadlines. Deadlines became court filings. And then one morning the notice went up at my gate sale date set. I stood in my kitchen that night with the lights off, staring at the window over the sink, and I swear I could still hear my wife's laugh in the quiet. I held a mug I wasn't even drinking from, just gripping it like it could keep me anchored. And for the first time in my life, I wondered if I was losing. Not in court, not on paper, in my bones. I thought maybe I'm the stubborn old man they say I am. Maybe I should walk away. Maybe I should take whatever cash I can and leave them to it. It's just land, right? It's just dirt and grass and fences. But then I pictured my grandfather, hands cracked and bleeding, building a life out of nothing. I pictured my dad teaching me to ride the perimeter, showing me the corner markers like they were sacred. I pictured my wife standing on the porch at sunset, leaning into my shoulder like the world finally made sense. And I felt something harden inside me. No, this wasn't just land. This was identity. And Melissa Hart was trying to erase it. The auction was a joke, a quick little event with too few bidders and too much confidence. And wouldn't you know it, my ranch sold to Kyle Hart, Melissa's brother-in-law, for a price that didn't even make sense unless you understood the real math: steal it cheap, flip it to a developer, cash out big. That night I didn't sleep. I pulled property records. I tracked filings. I compared signatures. I went down the rabbit hole like it was my job again, because apparently it was. And around 3 in the morning, I found the thread that unraveled everything. The boundary adjustment document, the one Melissa had bragged about, had a surveyor's signature on it. A name I recognized, a guy who'd done work in this county for decades, a guy who'd been dead for 2 years. I sat back in my chair so hard it creaked. Then I dug deeper. HOA financial filings. tax records. And there it was. The HOA was behind on taxes, hundreds of thousands. They were bleeding money, and the only way to keep the whole glossy Canyon Ridge illusion alive was to find cash. Fast. And what's faster than taking someone's land and selling it? And then I found something worse. A pattern. Other liens, other foreclosures, other properties quietly transferred to people connected to the board. This wasn't Melissa being power-hungry. This was Melissa running a racket with a clipboard and a smile. So I made calls. The kind of calls you don't make unless you're ready to end someone. My daughter Lauren flew in from Denver sharp as a razor and just as tired of bullies. My old friend Tom Brennan, an attorney who loved nothing more than cracking HOA boards like walnuts, came on board. And a retired detective named Mike Reyes owed me a favor from years back. We built a case like we were building a wall brick by brick, no gaps, no mercy. Melissa, meanwhile, kept strutting around like she'd already won. She announced a community safety meeting, invited county officials, brought in a so-called environmental consultant to claim my ranch was a hazard. She stood at the front of that room and talked about me like I wasn't even there, like I was a problem to be removed. And I let her. I sat in the back, listening, watching her overplay her hand, hearing her slip into arrogance. I recorded what I could. I watched homeowners nod along, terrified of being the next target. Then came the county hearing. The room smelled like old carpet and stale coffee, and Melissa walked in like a queen arriving to accept tribute. She brought binders. She brought charts. She brought that same white blazer like armor. When she spoke sweet and tragic, like she was saving the community from a dangerous rancher. And when she finished, the county commissioner looked at me like, "Well, what do you have to say?" I stood up slowly, and it felt like the whole room tilted. My heart wasn't racing anymore. It was calm. That kind of calm that comes right before a storm hits land. "I'm here," I said, "to report felony fraud." Melissa blinked, then laughed, actually laughed like I'd told a joke. "Oh, please." I opened my folder. Not a huge binder, not a dramatic stack, just a clean file. "This boundary adjustment," I said, holding up a copy, "is signed by a surveyor who died 2 years ago." Someone in the back audibly gasped. Melissa's smile twitched. That's impossible." I didn't stop. "Your HOA is delinquent on taxes. Your board has benefited from property transfers connected to lien actions. I have recordings of board members discussing greasing the right hands to push these filings through. I have a witness who was paid to sabotage my fence to create a false incident. And I have financial trails that connect your brother-in-law who conveniently bought my ranch to your development contacts." Melissa's face went pale so fast I almost